new urbanist. I'm not sure I would describe myself as an urbanist before today, but that's okay. I think we're on the same page as a lot of you guys, so hopefully this will explain why I'm here today. This was a project inspired by the fact that I live near the Grove, and every time I go to the Grove, it's a terrible pedestrian experience. And I really would like to see a redesign of the Grove Drive, which is essentially the alleyway that the Grove uses to redirect cars into their parking structure. But it's also the main pedestrian access way to the Grove. So essentially, as I said, I'm trying to push a redesign, and I'm sort of hoping that if there's a filmmaker here that would like to work with me for the next week, that maybe I can convince you that this is a project worth looking into, because it's a relatively small project that would help a lot of people, I believe. So the Grove, you guys are familiar with the Grove, everybody knows the Grove, but I thought it was interesting that the Grove has over 18 million annual visitors and outpaces Disneyland, which is something Scott mentioned, and I didn't believe him until I looked it up for myself. But I also thought it was a little ironic that it's meant to mimic a pleasant pedestrian street when it's surrounded by 3-story walls on all sides and basically is completely cut off from the surrounding community. So this is a picture of me pushing my 4-month-old daughter in a stroller down the Grove Drive, which, as you can see, is extremely narrow. This is the only way to get to the Grove from Beverly, unless you go all the way to Fairfax and cut around. But this is how narrow the sidewalk is. It's anti-pedestrian, narrow. There's all these driveways, as you can see. Well, first I'll show you these boxes. So this apartment structure here built these garden boxes, probably hoping to add a little bit of green space. But essentially, what they did is they stole about 2/3 of the sidewalk space and didn't really accommodate. Didn't add any new space for pedestrians. And as you can see, there's cars parked there too. So as you're walking down the street, as you can see on the right, it's hard to pass if there's another stroller coming the other direction. And this is a woman who was pulling out of the Arrow One parking structure, didn't look, just pulled straight out. It was about 5 feet away from me and my child. So there's dangerous driveways, distracted drivers, and then once you get past all of that, you have this very long, this is my nanny here, Allison, who's walking my dog, my reluctant dog, across the street. You have a light that is very short. It's extremely short. If any of you have ever walked across this street, essentially this light, if you don't start walking the second this light changes, you will not make it to the other side before it goes red. And as you can see from some of these cars, they have these big posts in between all these exits, so these cars can't see who's coming. So there's essentially, it's like blind sight lines. So you have to rush across the street, and then once you finally do that, you have to walk through the valet circle to get to the Grove. So it's totally anti-pedestrian. It's self-contained. This entire place was designed almost as if they didn't believe anyone would ever walk there. And, it was just an afterthought to even consider, that somebody might be walking. So once you, passed all these dangerous driveways and ran across the street, you get to walk through a bunch of people pulling their Bentleys and Ubers and everything else and try not to get killed. And then if you're coming up from the other direction, you have these beautiful commercial loading bays that you get to walk by with these gigantic trucks. They're unloading everything for this mall. And this building here in the middle, you can kind of get an idea of the scale of the buildings. They're so tall. I mean, it blocks all light. You can't see anything. And this is what the other side of the street looks like. There's a beautiful park right there, Pan Pacific Park. I don't know if any of you have ever been there before, but it's one of the biggest parks in the Los Angeles area. It's gorgeous. I walk my dog through there all the time, and it borders the Grove Drive, but it's utterly cut off from the Grove Drive. So they built this fence. It's got sort of a high hill, so you can't even really see into it. and they just basically completely disconnected it from the street. So my solution is to push for a redesign. 2 minutes. So I'd like to make it safer for pedestrians and try to integrate it with Pan Pacific Park. And you know, this is one of these pre-generated slides, but I tried to fill it in as best I could. There's some people who suggested talking to Rick Caruso, who actually built the Grove, about pushing the redesign, see if he would support it. Push for some community support. I'm a board member of Mid-City West, along with Scott and Josh. So, you know, maybe looking at the community for some support and maybe pushing for some funding. This is an idea of what it could look like. This is a traditional road diet drawn by Scott Epstein. And this sort of shows how you can accommodate a bike lane on either side, a center turn lane, and one sort of car lane in either direction to make it a little safer, but also to allow something like this where you can have trees and plants. You know, you could have bike lanes, and it would encourage people to come in from the community without bringing their cars. This is another picture of sort of what I imagine a wider sidewalk might look like in the area. And then this was something I found that was interesting. This is a driveway redesign that you could potentially do, where essentially the driveways mostly look like the one on the left, the radius style driveways, which allow higher car speeds, are more dangerous. But if you build sort of this sidewalk style, it kind of forces cars to slow down a little bit. So that could potentially help slow everything down. The last point is really just to push an integration with Pan Pacific Park. And this is something that Josh actually suggested, which was to create a scramble cross, which is essentially like the Beverly Hills diagonal cross, where, you know, all the cars get to go and all the pedestrians get to go at the same time. And as you can see, the Grove is on the left, the park is on the right. I'd like to basically cut a hole in that fence and build a little, you know, pathway into the park so people at the Grove could take their lunch and walk into the park, or someone like me who's pushing my baby through the park and go right up to an intersection and go straight into the center rather than walking down this narrow, kind of dangerous street. And that's really what we're hoping to do, is just build a better connection with the community. So thank you very much.